What is good, everyone? This is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free. To live your best life, you must live label free. And I'm back with another incredible guest. So sit back, relax, and tune in. My next guest is the founder of Creating Top Producers, helping entrepreneurs and business leaders master their mindset, boost productivity, and gain both time and money freedom. Please welcome Patricia Stepler. Patricia, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Dan. I appreciate you having me as a guest today.
Oh, wow. I'm excited to have you. You've got a very unique story. And like once I started reading, like I always have to like reread the bio before I jump into a recording to remember our initial conversation. And it's like I got like muscle memory. It comes back to me. And I remember you sharing the story of how your son manifested his scholarship to go to college. And that's what kind of put you on the path to where you are today.
Yes,
So,
it did.
would you mind sharing that with the audience? Kind of telling me, like, I mean, I was just so moved by it. Kind of, it gave me
Yeah.
it gave me tears.
So when he was 12 in sixth grade, my oldest daughter was in college. My second daughter was about to go to college. And I guess for some reason he picked up the financial burden that, college can be on a family. And so one day he said, Mom, you don't need to worry about putting me through college. And I said, Oh, really? I said, What are you going to do? And he says, I'm going to get a scholarship. And I said, Well, how are you going to get that? And he said, Well, I'm going to be a collegiate athlete. And, I'm thinking 12 years old, 6 more years to go. What are the odds? And he also had juvenile diabetes amongst two lazy eyes and things
Oh,
like that. So
wow.
he had some other obstacles in the way, but I'd done personal development most of my life, and so I wasn't going to steal his dream.
Sure.
So even though in my mind I'm thinking, okay, yeah, well, I'm not going to believe this one, it's never going to happen. I let him believe it.
Yeah.
And he just kept telling me that for the next 6 years. Well, then he decided about his sophomore year in high school that he was going to be a baseball player. Well, if you know anything about baseball in college, there isn't a whole lot of money there. And, if he'd have chosen the football or the basketball, maybe he would have gotten, a pretty good scholarship, but he chose baseball and there's no money. And again, I didn't steal his dream. And, just like any time when you're going after a goal, he had disappointments,
Oh, yeah.
discouragements. He could have quit, he could have stopped. I wouldn't have felt bad. I wouldn't have, nothing would have bothered me had he stopped. But he just kept persisting on this. And so when we went to talk to the school, it was a school in Georgia, he wanted to play in the South. And they told us in the admissions office, well, you can expect maybe a third to half. Now, it was more academic. It was not an athletic scholarship, it was an academic scholarship. So when the letter came for his scholarship, he says to me, Mom, wouldn't it be funny if it's a full scholarship? To which I said, now you know what they told us, one third
Yeah.
to one half,
Right.
that's all you can expect. And when he opened it, and it was a full scholarship, not only for that year, but any increase in price they would
Wow.
go up with
See,
that.
that gives me chills.
Yeah, and it was like I was super excited for him and he was thrilled because that's all he thought about for 6 years.
Yeah.
And yet I was really angry with myself because I'm thinking, wait, I'm the one that's done all this personal development for a couple decades here and I've never done anything like that. How did
Yeah.
he do this? I knew he'd caused it, I didn't know how. And that led me to a search. I had to figure it out. I had to know exactly what he had done. And about that time, I saw this video with Bob Proctor, and I had heard that name before, but I'd never come across him in any of the conferences or conventions or any materials. I never had anything from him. But immediately when I heard him speak, the way he was talking about how the mind worked, and it was just things I had never picked up on the personal development I'd done previous. And I was like, this man knows the answer. And I just had to learn from him.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Um, I love that your son was able to harness manifestation at such a young age.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
But
I think
he didn't know what he had done.
right,
And that's
right.
that's a
But it was like it
problem.
was that
Yeah.
innocence that he had to that
Yeah.
belief and that dream and like I think it's that undeniable belief and unstoppable dream that allows the manifestation to happen. And
Yeah.
I know when we talked, he's gone on to manifest even more incredible things, right?
Yes, he has.
Yeah. And we're gonna, well, you can share that in a minute, but I think that we can manifest good and bad.
Oh, absolutely.
And so
Absolutely, we do.
there have been times in my life where I have done both. And I didn't know, like, as I've been on this path with the podcast and I've gone through overcome some trauma myself, like I've started to learn a little bit more about manifestation. And I was like, what, wait a second. Well, when I was when I'm my early 20s, mid 20s, like I manifested that. You know?
Yes.
So what can you share? And then we're gonna get into like more your path, but what else has your son manifested for his life?
Well, when he came out of grad school, he went on to get his master's degree. And when he came out of school, the economy wasn't that good and job market wasn't that good. And yet he had a job the very next week. He could have started the day after he graduated.
Wow.
And he said to me, well, you know what you're supposed to do? Like it just,
Yeah. Like whatever.
again, he just thought about it. And then a couple years later, he decided he wanted to study Japanese. My three kids and my granddaughter all got on this app that they shared, and they each were doing a different language, and he chose Japanese. I'm like, why? That's a tough language to
Yeah.
learn. There's not a
Yeah.
whole lot of English or even the Romance languages that transfer over to Japanese. Well, about a year and a half ago, he got the opportunity to go to Japan for a job. And it was
Amazing.
like, it was something he, probably wanted to do because he was always interested in the kind of that Zen culture and,
Yeah.
the Buddha
Yeah.
and things like that. It interested him. And, he just applied for the job and then he decided he better tell me he was going to do that. And then he got the job and went. He just
Wow.
keeps doing things like that.
Phenomenal. So, before we start unpacking your story, after he got the scholarship for school, full boat, and you're like, I got to figure out how he did this. What
Mhm.
did you discover about the manifestation process?
That you really have to believe in what you're doing, even when things are not going well. And I think that's where a lot of people fall short. They have that disappointment or that roadblock or whatever you want to call getting away, and then they stop or they switch and decide, oh, well, maybe that's not my goal. Maybe this is my goal. And
Yeah.
so that just confuses the universe at that point. Whereas he, even with his discouragements, he had made a decision. And here's the funny thing. He told me at one point, he said, well, I told you I was getting that scholarship. I figured I better figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
How many of us have that kind of tenacity to if you say you're going to do something, you better figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. So after going through that, and at what point did you creating top, or did you start creating top producers?
It was a few years. I had to go on that journey. I had to figure it out, because even though I'd done all that personal development, I call it more traditional,
Yeah.
in that you don't really talk about the manifestation of a goal. You just set your goals and do it. And so that was all really new to me. And because I was in the education world, I had been a school teacher, and I felt like I needed to make this transition because I knew I wanted to work with business people. And I'd always wanted to start a business. In fact, had my parents been able to afford it, I would have stayed an extra year or two in college and picked up a business degree after my music degree. And so I always, had that interest.
Yeah.
So I went out and did like corporate training for about a year and a half. And at the time, I remember I was at a conference with Bob Proctor, and he said, "Why are you doing that?" And I said, "Well, I feel like I need to make that transition because I don't feel like I think like a business person. So I need to
Yeah.
know what their needs are, what their goals are, how they deal with people." He goes, "Well, if you feel you need it, you need to do it, but don't do it for too long." So it was like start your own business.
Yeah.
And so I guess that was kind of where I was at that point. I
Yeah.
just needed to go. And then I started my own business and, kind of went through a little rebranding to get to the creating top producers. And, that's really what I want to do. I want to create people that unlock their potential because so many of us don't realize that we have all these underlying skills that we just need to develop and we can, blossom into somebody else. And we get so locked in into where we are and don't realize that we have so much more to offer.
Do you incorporate some of the manifestation skills or belief systems in your
I absolutely do. Yeah.
yeah.
And sometimes people think it's a little, too on the edge, but
Woo woo.
yeah,
I had
but
this
I
conversation
think,
with someone the other day, like, oh, I don't want to say it because it might be too woo woo. I'm like, well, screw that.
yeah.
I'm past the point of woo woo. Like, come on, good energy.
Well,
Good
and
energy is
I
good energy.
I think the world is starting to realize that there's
Yeah.
something to it. And you know what? We've all done it.
Yeah.
We have all manifested things in our lives, but we didn't realize what we were doing. Therefore, we don't understand, that we followed that process. Because I could see once my son had done that and I started to study, I'm like, well, I've done that before.
Yeah.
And we all have, but we don't call it that because we don't realize, and
Yeah.
then we think we've never manifested anything. Well, that's not true.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that you have to put action behind that manifestation, right? It's
Yes,
not like you're just
absolutely.
going to sit there and you're cross-legged and, in meditating position and things are going to happen. Yes,
Hmm.
meditation is good. They've shown that studies have shown that scientifically it's great for your brain. It's great for you, just great all over. But important, good motion stays in motion. Like a body in motion
Hmm.
stays in motion. Like a good thought that stays in motion. It's like there's something behind the energy of the action and the manifestation together. So like I'm big into
Right.
like you have to do this, like you said, do the things that you say you're going to do. And at the same time, there has to be this belief system that goes in alignment with that pushes you along further, that allows that to become alive or to be born.
Right. And so I think a lot of it, when we talk about manifesting, it's about changing the vibration, changing how you're feeling. And, so if all you do is think about it, that's more like what I call traditional.
Yeah.
Yeah, personal development. But when you get involved and you can feel yourself shifting and you get emotionally involved, that's when you're moving to higher vibration. And
Yeah.
there's all these different levels of vibration. So it depends on, where you're at. But if your goal is much higher than where you are now, you've got to shift onto that vibration. You've got to get into that
Mm.
feeling of that goal. And I think that's what my son did, when he would tell me when he went to any practice, whatever sport he was playing at the time, and he would go to practice or to a game, he said, I was never going to practice. He said, I was going to get a scholarship. So, he had that total focus. And I remember the one time, after I learned all this, I had been selling cosmetics for a while and there was this contest, and the top three people were going to get a diamond ring.
Oh, wow.
And I remember, I did the same thing he did, but this was before I understood all of this. And, I saw the three rings. I pretended they were on my finger,
Oh,
and
yes. I
I
love that.
think of them all the time. And all of a sudden my sales were so much better than what I'd ever gotten before. And I was selling more skincare, which is where really started to earn more money. And I'm like, what's going on? I'm having these cosmetic parties and people are, buying things more than ever before. And it was the same process,
Yeah.
and I won first prize. So I was like really
Amazing. So
excited.
you
Yeah,
got the diamond ring.
exactly. But do you know it, when you
Had to
don't
feel
know
so
what you've
good.
yeah, when you don't know what you've done, you're excited for yourself, but you can't repeat it.
Yeah.
And that's why I just feel like it's a message that people need to hear. There is a process that you go through, and is it easy? Not necessarily, but you have to keep that focus and keep going.
Is that part of what allows people to unlock their potential, like you mentioned?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Because as you start to, so when you think about that idea and you have that goal, and it's got to be something that excites you. And
Yeah.
that's the other problem with goal setting. A lot of people set a goal that really isn't exciting. It's what they think they can get
Yeah.
instead of what they really want. But when you set a goal that, inspires you and you continue to think about, you start shifting that vibration, and then you come up with the ideas, and then you have to act on them, like you said,
Yeah.
because it is action reaction that brings the results. And so you have to do something different. You can't keep doing what you're doing today. We're going to keep getting the same results.
It's called insanity.
Yes, it is.
Do you have a success story that you can share with the audience about someone that you've worked with that
Yes,
has
absolutely.
allowed them to unlock that potential and, kind of shift their life in a positive way and on what you're trying to do for everyone that you work with.
Yes. So I had in fact they were my very first clients. It was a husband and wife. It was a
Oh,
woman-owned construction business.
oh wow.
And her husband at the time was still working in his job as like maintenance engineer. And so they started this construction business. She was actually a biology professor, and she was just
Interesting.
tired of the whole teaching, and so they decided to start this business. And at the time they were, like earning about 180,000.
Okay.
Only none of that was coming into their pockets. That was going to fund the business and pay the employees, things like that.
Sure.
So when they came to me and we started to shift where they were and decide what they wanted to do, and her goal was to build luxury homes.
Mm.
And I mean, she built some beautiful homes, designed. It was just gorgeous. But then she decided maybe those weren't the people she wanted to work with because they were sometimes very difficult to work with people that
Oh
wanted
yeah, I can
luxury homes.
imagine.
So they actually, by this time, her husband had been able to retire. They were now making, several million a year. And they were actually keeping some of that money. So he came into the business from his full-time job. And then they started to get some commercial jobs. And, so, then they started making 10 million, 11, 12, 13, so they went from about 180 to about 13 million, about 6 years. And, now they have their own showroom and they have staff and now they're
Amazing.
working the whole East Coast building commercially. I mean, it's just amazing what they did, but they really unlocked. And the exciting thing is not only unlocking their potential, but you see the people they become
Yes,
because
right.
they are not the same person I started working with.
Yeah.
They just have such confidence and they just, move into one thing after another and they don't have that fear. Like I remember early on in her business, he wanted to buy a truck for the business. And she wanted, instead of getting a new truck, she's like, well, let's just pick up this used truck. And I said, is that the image you want?
Right. Exactly.
And so it really, the price wasn't that much difference. The payment wasn't that much different for the, used or the new one. And I was like, this gives you the image. And now they own multiple vehicles in their business. And it's
Yeah.
just, they've just become somebody different. And they don't have that fear of, stepping out and trying something new
Mm,
because they,
I love
know
that.
they can do it.
So was there um an underlying setback that you had to uncover for her to step into that image? Like you said, she wanted to buy the used truck, and you said you
Yeah.
pointed that out to her. Like, what was the underlying? Was that the fear?
It was the fear. She
Yeah.
worried,
Okay.
she worried about the money.
Sure.
And she was
Don't
very
we all?
concerned about that. Her husband was the visionary. I mean, he could see exactly where he wanted to go with getting these trucks and getting, multiple vehicles and so on. And she worried about the money because
Yeah.
she would get into that nitty gritty.
Oh
And
yeah.
so that's what it was, and he kind of stayed away from that. She, kind of looked over the books more than he did. And so that's where the fear came from.
Amazing. And what does that look like when somebody wants to work with you? Do you set up an intro call with them? Like
Yes.
what's the process look like?
Yes. So I usually, talk with them first because I want to make sure that they're a good fit for me and I'm a good
Sure.
fit for them.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to take on a client that I don't feel like I can really help and move forward. And so yeah, we set up initial call. Generally, it's even maybe two calls. Like I just talked to a gentleman today, and we had this initial call, and then I'm like, let me think about this because I'm one of those thinkers,
Yeah.
and so I was like, let me think, what would be the best plan for you?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I leave it, and then we do another call, and then I present the plan that I would lay out for them as to how they can move forward and get the results that they want, and then we decide whether we're going to work together or not.
Yeah. You got to be a good match because you don't want
Yeah.
to be married to someone for too long and it turns ugly.
Right. And I remember one phone call I had with somebody. I was like,
Yeah.
doesn't matter what he would offer me to pay me. I
Yeah.
couldn't work with him. Just not always a fit.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. Patricia, where can people find you, connect with you, learn more about working with you, and support you?
Yeah, so they can connect with me on social media and LinkedIn, Patricia Stepler, Facebook. And, I have some free gifts that you can get too,
Excellent.
that because you need to change your thinking, if you want to raise the level of from where you are to where you want to be.
Amen to that, sister.
Yeah,
So do you have a website?
I do, creatingtopproducers.com.
Excellent. You guys, and put those links in the show notes. So if you connected with Patricia, go ahead and go to the show notes, go click on those links, go give her a follow on social. And if you're interested, doesn't hurt to schedule a call, see where it goes, and see if you guys are a good fit. Patricia, this is the part of the show where I like to ask for last words of wisdom or advice. What would you like to leave with us today?
I like to leave the advice that you can never outperform the image you hold of yourself. And so in order to move forward and get a higher result, you're going to have to become somebody different.
Mm,
And you have to go through that maybe uncomfortable feeling, but you have to see yourself as deserving of that
yes.
goal. And that means you have to become somebody that maybe you're not today, and that's okay.
I can relate to that right now, 1,000,000%. As I'm evolving and becoming this person of publishing this magazine.
There you go.
Girl, this has been a process. So I love that those words of wisdom. I think that was meant for me today. But thank you so much for sharing your story. What a beautiful evolution for you with your son and just like the trajectory that his manifestation took you on in your own life. And I
Yeah.
think it is just an incredible example of what we are capable of when we get those roadblocks out of the way. So thank you for sharing your story. We really appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You guys, this is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free. To live your best life, you must live label free. As always, don't forget to subscribe, follow, rate, review, comment, share, all those good things. And I'll be back soon with more dynamic guests.